3 months before his parents were killed, Jake Reiner did something that still haunts him. He warned them, not casually, not vaguely. He told them, clearly and urgently, that his brother was dangerous, that letting him back into the house was a mistake, that love, this time, was not enough. They didn't listen. On the night Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle were murdered, Hollywood called it a tragedy. The police called it a crime. But Jake Reiner knew something worse. This was a disaster that had been seen coming. Now, for the first time, the eldest son is speaking out about the warning that was ignored, the family loyalty that blinded reason, and the moment he realized that being right came at the highest possible cost. This isn't a story about fame. It's a story about what happens when the truth is spoken and dismissed. Jake Reiner had never wanted to be the voice of alarm in his own family. As the eldest son, he learned early to stay steady, to absorb tension rather than create it. While others struggled, Jake became the one who functioned, the calm presence, the reliable son, the one who didn't ask for attention. Silence was his role, and he played it well. But watching his younger brother unravel changed everything. Jake saw patterns others refused to name: escalation, volatility, a loss of control that no amount of patience could soften. What frightened him most wasn't the addiction itself, it was the anger underneath it. That's when Jake made the call. A warning he knew would break the illusion his parents were clinging to. And once spoken, it couldn't be taken back, only ignored. Nick Reiner had always been the center of concern in the family, long before addiction made it obvious. While Jake learned to disappear into responsibility, Nick drew attention through fragility. He was sensitive, unpredictable, and often overwhelmed by emotions he couldn't control. The family adjusted around him without realizing it. Conversations softened, boundaries bent, problems were explained away as phases. When drugs entered Nick's life in his teens, the shift was immediate. Alcohol turned into cocaine, then pills, then something darker. Rehab became routine. Apologies followed every relapse. Promises sounded sincere until they weren't. Over time, chaos stopped feeling like an emergency and started feeling like normal. Jake watched this from the outside, growing increasingly alarmed. He saw how addiction stripped away reason and replaced it with resentment. He noticed how Nick's anger sharpened after every disappointment, how frustration turned inward, then outward. This wasn't just self-destruction anymore, it was volatility. 3 months before the murders, Jake could no longer stay silent. He called his parents and said what no one wanted to hear. Nick should not be allowed back into the house. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Jake wasn't asking for punishment. He was asking for protection for Rob, for Michelle, and for Nick himself. The response was immediate and emotional. He's your brother. He's sick. We can't abandon him. Jake understood the love behind those words. But he also understood the danger they were ignoring. Compassion had blurred into denial. And denial, Jake feared, was turning the family home into a place where consequences no longer existed. When the call ended, Jake felt something settle in his chest, a terrible certainty that the warning had come too late. The family moved forward as if nothing had changed. But everything had. From that moment on, Jake lived with a quiet dread he couldn't shake. He didn't argue again. He didn't push harder. He knew that pressing the issue would only harden resistance. His parents had already chosen hope over fear, love over boundaries. And once that choice was made, there was no graceful way to undo it. What Jake didn't know was how fast everything would accelerate. Nick returned to the house carrying more than addiction. He carried resentment, shame, the kind of anger that grows when someone feels both protected and judged at the same time. Family members sensed it immediately. Conversations became careful. Doors closed more often. The house adjusted again, this time around tension instead of compassion. Rob tried to restore calm the only way he knew how: presence. He stayed close. He watched carefully. He believed that proximity could still soften whatever was hardening inside his son. Michelle did the same. She cooked. She checked in. She tried to create normalcy where none truly existed. Jake, miles away, felt powerless. He checked his phone obsessively. He called home more often than usual. Every unanswered ring sent his thoughts spiraling. He replayed his warning over and over, wondering if different words might have landed differently, wondering if being calmer or harsher would have changed anything at all. Then came the night before everything ended. A small gathering, familiar faces, forced smiles. The kind of evening families cling to when they're trying to pretend stability still exists. But under the surface, emotions were raw. Nick was volatile. Rob was exhausted. Years of unspoken conflict surfaced in fragments, glances, sharp tones, half-finished sentences. At one point, Rob drew a line. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was firm. He told Nick that things could not continue the way they were. That love did not mean permission, that safety mattered, that boundaries were no longer optional. For Nick, the words landed like rejection. For Rob, they were an act of survival. The room fell silent. Guests sensed something irreversible had just happened, and when the night ended, it did so without resolution, only distance. The next day, December 14th, Jake was in New York. He was packing, thinking about the holidays, mentally preparing himself for a visit he knew would be tense. His phone buzzed early in the morning. The first message was confusing. The second made no sense. By the third, the world narrowed to a single, unbearable truth. His parents were dead. The details came slowly, cruelly. A confrontation, a knife. Michelle attacked first, Rob rushing in instinctively, doing what he had always done, protecting. By the time authorities arrived, both were gone. The house Jake had grown up in was sealed with tape. The warmth it once held was erased in a matter of minutes. Nick was missing. Jake didn't scream. He didn't collapse. He described the feeling later as falling into a void where sound couldn't reach. Grief didn't explode. It froze. When Nick was arrested hours later, the reality became final. This was not a random tragedy. This was the outcome Jake had tried to prevent. In the days that followed, Jake moved through shock like a witness to his own life. Interviews, statements, logistics. He spoke when required and stayed silent when he could. But inside, something burned in anger he didn't know where to place. He was angry at Nick, angry at his parents, and angry at himself. "I warned them," echoed in his head, not as vindication, but as punishment. Being right offered no relief. It only deepened the loss. Then came the call from jail. Nick's voice was broken, desperate, afraid. He cried. He denied intent. He asked for help. And then he asked for money, millions, for bail, for lawyers, for another chance to escape consequences the way he always had. Jake listened. This was the moment he had feared and prepared for all at once. For the first time, he didn't soften his voice. He didn't negotiate with compassion. He said no, not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. He understood something his parents never fully accepted. Rescuing Nick again would not bring anyone back, and it would not save what was left of the family. That no cost Jake his last connection to his brother. Public reaction was immediate and merciless. Some called Jake heartless. Others praised his strength. But no one truly understood the position he was in, the impossible choice between enabling the past or protecting the future. Jake didn't defend himself. He stepped back from journalism, from commentary, from the life he had known. He became, unwillingly, the story, a man carrying the weight of foresight, grief, and the unbearable knowledge that prevention and love are not always aligned. In quiet moments, Jake admits that he still questions himself, whether he should have flown home sooner, whether he should have confronted Nick directly, whether one more conversation might have shifted the outcome by inches just enough to matter. But as time passes, one truth remains constant. This tragedy was not caused by a lack of love. It was caused by love without limits. Jake's story is not about blame. It is about the cost of ignoring warning signs because acknowledging them feels too cruel. It is about families who confuse compassion with surrender, and about how denial can slowly turn homes into danger zones. He lives now with a responsibility he never asked for, to say out loud what many families refuse to admit, that sometimes the hardest act of love is drawing a line and holding it, even when your heart breaks for doing so. Because silence didn't save his parents, and pretending everything would somehow work out cost them their lives. What remains for Jake is not closure, but purpose. To speak, to warn, and to hope that somewhere, someone will hear the truth. He spoke too late for his own family and act before love becomes the last excuse for disaster. In the end, Jake Reiner's story leaves us with an uncomfortable truth. Love, when left without boundaries, can become dangerous. This tragedy was not born from hatred or neglect, but from compassion stretched beyond reason, from warnings softened until they lost their power. Jake did everything families tell themselves is right. He spoke up. He named the risk. He asked for limits. And when his warning was dismissed, he lived with the quiet terror of knowing what might come next. Being right did not protect him from loss. It only ensured he would carry the weight of foresight for the rest of his life. This story matters because it is not unique. Many families face similar crossroads where loyalty clashes with safety and love clouds judgment. The hardest choice is rarely between caring and cruelty. More often, it is between hope and reality. If this story made you think about someone in your own life, don't wait. Have the difficult conversation. Set the boundary. Say the words that feel uncomfortable but necessary. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Like this video if you believe these stories deserve to be heard. And subscribe to the channel for more untold truths behind the headlines. Because sometimes, listening to a warning can save more than a relationship, it can save lives.